up on Global Business, Chinese President Xi Jinping meets with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken, saying bilateral relations must be based on mutual respect. Premier Li Qiang begins an official visit to Germany, seeking to expand cooperation. The Hong Kong Stock Exchange launches its new dual counter trading model on Tuesday. From CGTN headquarters in Beijing, this is Global Business. I'm Michelle Vandenberg. Let's start with our top story this hour. Chinese President Xi Jinping has met with visiting U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken in Beijing, stressing the need for a stable China-U.S. relationship. Blinken reaffirms the United States' commitment to the Bali Agenda, pledging to foster high-level engagement, open communication, and cooperation.
In a meeting with U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken on Monday, Chinese President Xi Jinping emphasized the necessity for a stable China-U.S. relationship. He suggested that the future of humanity relies on the two nations' capacity to coexist peacefully and maintain a cooperative relationship. Xi Jinping underscored that both countries have a responsibility to properly manage relations to contribute to global stability and development. He highlighted that major country competition isn't the trend of the times and won't solve the challenges faced by the U.S. or the world. The president called on the U.S. to respect China's rights and interests, not to deprive China of its development rights. President Xi reiterated China's commitment to a stable China-U.S. relationship, urging the U.S. to adopt a pragmatic approach. He also requested both sides to adhere to the common understanding reached with President Biden in Bali, and to convert positive statements into actions to improve China-U.S. relations. U.S. Secretary of State Antony Blinken expressed the United States' dedication to resume the agreed agenda established between the two nations during the meeting in Bali. Blinken affirmed the commitments outlined by President Biden, which explicitly state that the United States does not seek a renewed Cold War or to change China's political system. He further clarified that America's alliances are not intended to target China and that the United States does not support Taiwan independence, nor does it seek conflict with China. Secretary Blinken voiced an optimistic outlook towards future high-level interactions with China, expressing a desire to sustain open lines of communication, manage differences responsibly, and actively seek dialogue, exchanges, and cooperation.
Blinken's visit to China comes at a time when trade between the two largest economies has dropped by over 12% in dollar terms on a yearly basis. This begs the question of how the trade between the U.S. and China came to this point. In 2021, former Chinese Vice Premier Liu He held talks with U.S. Trade Representative Katherine Tai and Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen to repair bilateral trade relations that were badly hit by Trump-era policies. Trade between the two countries did eventually enjoy a rapid recovery following the COVID-19 outbreak. However, this recovery has short-lived due to the implementation of more policies aimed at containing China, such as the inclusion of dozens of Chinese tech firms on the entity list as national security threats, the audit dispute that led many Chinese companies to delist from the U.S. stock exchanges, and the CHIPS and Science Act that barred American chip makers from building certain facilities in China. On a positive note, policymakers have kept communicating. One of the highlights were in last November when Chinese President Xi Jinping and U.S. President Joe Biden met during the G20 meeting and agreed to encourage people-to-people exchanges. Now, for more discussions on Sino-U.S. relations and also Blinken's visit to China, we're joined by Jamil Ahmad, Chief Analyst at GTC, a brokerage based in Dubai. Jamil, thank you so much for joining us. So, the China and U.S., both sides have expressed during today's meeting that their willingness for mutual respect and also the importance of a stable bilateral relationship. What do you think the meeting means for Sino-U.S. relations?
It's significant, and we have optimistic headlines coming out of the meeting, which is the first meeting for 5 years. We have to look at this from both a global perspective and also from an economic perspective. We all know that the US and Chinese economy are the number 1 and 2 largest economies in the world. But with bilateral relations being strained now for nearly 5 years, this has been a downside weight to the global economy because we're all dependent on US and China not only getting along, but their economies performing as well as they could possibly can. So I'd look at the scenario as something like being on a plane. At the moment, we're trying to fix the wings on those planes, which is the US and China relations, but that plane has been on break and been on standby for some time. So should that plane be able to take off again, all passengers on this plane, which includes the global economy, industries, and corporations, we can see optimistic signs that we're going to get going again.
Yeah, that's a great metaphor, actually. Blinken also says the U.S. side looks forward to having high-level engagement with the Chinese side and also keep open lines of communication. How important is communication between the two countries?
It's essential towards rebuilding the relationship, and I would say that it's the right step in the direction and that the road is being repaired, but we still have to take into account how important the relationships are. Before the pandemic, and before the inflationary pressures, which is the main threat to the global economy today, the trade tensions between 2018 and 2019 led to the weakest level and growth for the global economy since the global financial crisis. So this is how important the meeting is, and repairing that meeting is as well to global economic relations and also for prosperity for everybody.
Blinken also mentioned that the U.S. is committed to returning to the agenda set by the two presidents in Bali last November. Both sides agree that a stable relationship is not only beneficial to the two sides, but also to the entire world. Your thoughts on that?
It's completely correct. We have to look at this again from a trade perspective, from an economic perspective, and also from a political perspective. US and China being friends again and repairing that friendship is going to be more beneficial to everybody. So it's good to see that they're going to meet again in the next couple of months in Bali, and that the communication lines will remain open, because those last 5 years where relationships have been strained has been a negative way to the global economy, and we need as much good news for sentiment as we can get, because as pointed out, we've got global inflationary pressures, interest rate policy globally is still uncertain, the pandemic has only just passed us, but some industries and corporations are still facing some of the aftermaths there. So the US and China being on a better relationships can lead to stronger global prospects economically as well as politically, and that can only be seen as a positive overall.
Yeah, great sign for the whole world. Thank you so much for your insights. Really appreciate your time. Jamil Ahmad, Chief Analyst at GTC, a brokerage based in Dubai. In recent days, many business representatives and experts have visited China to reiterate and reaffirm the country's economic importance. CGTN earlier spoke to Professor Li Daokui from Tsinghua University and Professor Jeffrey Sachs, leading economic experts, on how they view the economic ties between the two sides.
It came to American politics in the last 10 years that we need to fight against China's success. Well, that's a terrible idea, a very dangerous idea. But I know that some American strategists or politicians believe in it. I think they're fools, frankly, if I could use a very strong term, because it's absolutely reckless. And when we're trained as economists, we think win-win. But when you're a military strategist, you might think win-lose. And I believe we should be aiming for win-win solutions. My view is basically through diplomacy and discussion. The idea that the United States is going to starve China's economy by cutting off semiconductors is reckless and very naive, in my opinion. China will be able to find its way around these sanctions.
Yeah, I fully agree with Professor Sachs' analysis. Let me add one, I think, simple point from China. That is, I do believe that there is a task to be accomplished by scholars like me who are fortunate to be educated both in China and in the West, in my case in particular in the US, okay? That is to explain to the American society at large, and also in particular to ordinary people on the street, that China is not a mirror image of the US. Today's China is not the emerging U.S. at the beginning of the 20th century, when China becomes powerful. Okay, China is not a country trying to impose its political, ideological belief system upon other countries. Partly because the Chinese political and the social political philosophies are, in my view, much more complicated to explain to other countries.
You're watching Global Business, still to come. Chinese Premier Li Qiang begins an official visit to Germany, seeking to expand cooperation between the two sides.
From the 1,035-kilometer railway linking China to Laos, facilitating connectivity and boosting economic growth in the landlocked Southeast Asian country, to the joint China-Saudi Arabia photovoltaic project to harness renewable energy in the oil-dependent kingdom. The Belt and Road Initiative has come a long way since it was first proposed in 2013, complementing the development strategies of partner countries and building on their existing strength.
开创合作共赢的新模式。
The Belt and Road Initiative, linking the world in the pursuit of common prosperity for humanity.
Chinese Premier Li Qiang has commenced an official visit to Germany. During his visit, he held discussions with German President. Now, for more discussions on this, let's cross over to our reporter Peter Oliver in Germany. Hi there, Peter. So first, bring us the latest about Chinese Premier Li Qiang's visit to Germany and what has been achieved so far.
It's a jam-packed visit, certainly never a dull moment while he's here. He's packing an awful lot in. On Monday, he's been meeting with Frank-Walter Steinmeier, the German president. He was at Schloss Bellevue, which is about a kilometre over my right shoulder, signing the guest book there at the official residency of the German presidency. Monday morning, very much about the pomp and circumstance of the state visit. He will be received with military honours as well. And later on Monday, we're expecting him just over my left shoulder at the Chancellery here. In fact, you may be able to see both the German and Chinese flags fluttering. We're expecting Premier Li here in around 2 hours' time for a meeting with German Chancellor Olaf Scholz. Then later, there will be a state banquet in which Premier Li will be the guest of honour, as well as quite a large Chinese delegation that will be meeting later on with a delegation from the German government on Tuesday. That's when the big bilateral business will be getting down to brass tacks just behind me in the Chancellor's building before the Premier of China moves on to Munich for a meeting with German business leaders.
What is the reaction of local people and enterprises on the visit?
Well, we have heard a lot of talk in the build-up to this. We're not just coming out of Germany, but out of the United States as well, about can countries pull away from China? Can there be a decoupling from China? Well, what we've heard already from the Federation of German Industries, one of the biggest business bodies in Germany, is if that was to happen, that it would be unrealistic and harmful. It would be, frankly, catastrophic if that was to happen economically for Germany. This has been a welcomed visit here for the head of the Chinese government to come to Germany for his first foreign visit. Germany and China strong economically, we all know that. But the fact that he's picked Germany as the first leg of his first foreign trip abroad, his first trip abroad, is probably been seen by some here as a sign that he wants to try and develop the relationship beyond it just being about business, beyond the economics. I had a little look at how the relationship stands at the moment and where they're perhaps looking to try and develop things ahead of time.
China is Germany's biggest trading partner. Business between the two countries was worth $320 billion in 2022. That's up 21% on the previous year. China has held that #1 trade spot for the last 7 years, with no sign of that changing. Meanwhile, Germany is the largest source of European investment in China, particularly in the automobile and chemical industries.
Chancellor Olaf Scholz was the first foreign leader to visit Beijing when COVID restrictions started to lift in November. That visit was seen as crucial as the two stressed cooperation in times of change. The ongoing conflict in Ukraine will be a major topic in the talks in Berlin. China has positioned itself as a peace broker, while as a NATO and EU member, Germany has become one of Ukraine's largest suppliers of weapons and financial aid. Meanwhile, the EU is also expected to lay out its strategy on the relationship with China in coming weeks.
The background of this is that a lot of analysts and politicians believe that the war in Ukraine changes the balance of power between the United States and Europe, that we become more condition takers, and if the United States want us to follow the American approach, then we should rethink our relationship with China.
China has said both itself and the EU are victims of US economic coercion. Instead, Beijing wants the EU to form an independent and objective perception of China. It hopes to deepen and expand relations with Germany and together contribute to economic prosperity, peace and stability. China and Germany differ on some key geopolitical issues, and while they'll be looking to maintain their important economic relationship, they'll also be looking to develop their understanding beyond business. And perhaps with that in mind, some have suggested that it not only makes sense but is reassuring that China's head of government has chosen Germany as the destination for his first foreign visit. Peter Oliver, CGTN, Berlin.
Two-way investment between China and Germany also maintained strong momentum last year. According to official data from China, German companies invested nearly $2.6 billion into the Chinese market in 2022. That was up more than 50% compared with the previous year. Meanwhile, Chinese investment in Germany topped $1.6 billion, basically the same as the year before. However, the number of mergers and acquisitions, as well as other investment deals by Chinese companies, continue to fall. Some analysts have attributed to geopolitical tensions and protectionism from the U.S. that has stirred up the global supply chain. The quarterly growth taking place in the solar photovoltaic industry is unprecedented. According to industry experts, installed global solar capacity doubled in the 3 years from 2018, bringing global capacity to 1 terawatt in April 2022, and that solar capacity is expected to more than double over the next 3 years. The world's largest solar energy trade fair, Intersolar Europe, which took place in Munich, Germany last week, saw the highest number of exhibitors and visitors than any other year. CGTN's Natalie Carney takes this report.
Solar is the most abundant of all renewable energy sources, and its use to produce electricity is increasing at a rapid rate. It may currently only account for a little more than 3.5% of global generation, but the sector itself saw an unprecedented growth of 22% last year, led by China, which produced 3/4 of that, followed by the United States and Europe. The race to reduce deadly CO2 emissions and meet global climate neutrality targets has those in the solar power industry pushing new products and technologies. And all of that was showcased at Intersolar Europe in Munich, the leading trade fair and conference for all things solar energy related.
This show is the first show worldwide that allows you to step on solar panels without producing micro cracks. This is really unique.
Without these shoes, maintenance work is done by removing individual panels or through the use of a crane.
Even the manufacturer for the panels, they are very interested in it because at the moment they say you are not allowed to walk on the panels.
Be it innovative ideas, higher voltage solar panels, quicker inverter solutions, or increased battery storage, it was all on display by some 1,500 exhibitions from around the world.
You can put maybe 5 to 7 kilowatts worth of solar, so literally you're running your car on free electricity.
The rapidly advancing solar energy industry has led to the expansion of Chinese company Clenergy from a single solar module mounting division to 4 divisions regions, offering a wide range of products and services for an increasing global clientele.
We just secured about 10 new distributors across from Ireland to Romania, and it's really encouraging to see that technology every year gets better and better. The advancements that has happened in the last decade and a half has just been amazing.
Hundreds of gigawatt hours of solar energy production contracts were signed during the three-day event, including a 1.5 gigawatt supply framework agreement between China's Longi Solar and Austria's Energy 3000. Under the umbrella brand, the Smarter E Europe, events also took place relating to energy storage systems, intelligent energy use in industry and buildings, and electromobility, proving that a complete energy transition away from fossil fuels is possible, with solar energy playing a defining role. Natalie Carney, CGTN, Munich.
The Hong Kong Stock Exchange launched its new dual counter trading model earlier today. Investors will be able to interchange securities listed in both Hong Kong dollar and RMB counters. 24 listed companies, including Alibaba and Tencent, have adopted this model. Our reporter Ann Chung in Hong Kong has more.
Yes, Hong Kong has launched the dual counter model, which now allows investors to use offshore Chinese yuan to buy and sell yuan-denominated shares on Hong Kong Stock Exchange. Before this, investors could only trade and settle in Hong Kong dollars, but this launch gives the option of doing that in yuan as well, and people can do this for 24 approved listed companies, including Tencent, Alibaba, Meituan, and Sun Hung Kai Properties, which together these 24 companies have a reported combined market value of about $1.9 trillion, with shares accounting for about 40% of the stock market's average daily turnover. Meanwhile, other companies can still apply to the Hong Kong Stock Exchange to be eligible for a yuan shares trading counter in addition to their Hong Kong dollar counter. At the same time, the Hong Kong Exchange has also rolled out the dual counter market making program, whereby 9 market makers will offer buy and sell quotes and help provide liquidity for the renminbi and Hong Kong dollar counters for the 24 companies. However, investors aren't confined to these 9 market makers. They can also trade yuan stocks through their own banks or brokers. Now, this morning there was active trading of yuan stocks. According to local media, in the first 20 minutes, Alibaba crossed 800,000 yuan, while 1.8 million yuan of Tencent shares were traded. And while this initiative applies to offshore yuan right now, the aim is to eventually allow mainland investors to trade yuan stocks with onshore yuan through the southbound Stock Connect. This launch is seen as an important milestone towards the internationalization of the yuan, and also paves the way for Hong Kong's role as an RMB internationalization hub.
And here are some perspectives from market experts about how the dual counter model could benefit investors globally.
对于持有人民币的投资人来说，
Investors with RMB funds no longer have to exchange to Hong Kong dollars in order to buy Hong Kong stocks. They would be able to trade without the risk of exchange rate fluctuations.
在香港的人民币离岸市场里边，给他们提供。
From now on, Hong Kong can offer a full spectrum of financial products as an RMB offshore market. It means other countries can make better investments with their RMB exchange reserves, which will help internationalize the RMB currency.
So we're creating more and more connectivity that will not only help China, it will also help the rest of the world. This is not just like a group of international investors financing just Chinese companies. It's also that great investment pool of capital from the mainland that is now financing international companies.
Let's check out some other business headlines we're tracking at this hour. British supermarket Morrisons said on Monday it was cutting the prices of 47 products by an average of over 25%. That shows a sign of inflation growth slowing down. The German government and Intel sealed an agreement over the U.S. chipmaker's planned factory in Dresden. The CEO of Intel said the company will receive more than $10 billion in subsidies from the government. The Bank of England has launched its first system-wide liquidity stress test. According to the BOE, the test is to establish how big banks, insurers, clearing houses, and investment funds respond collectively during extreme stresses in markets. In light of the geopolitical conflict that emerged earlier last year, Russia has been subject to some of the harshest sanctions from Western countries. Reports have emerged that many Western companies have withdrawn from Russia, possibly impacting the local population. However, is this really the case? Recently, our reporter Zheng Junfeng had the opportunity to visit Russia and discover for himself. Have a look.
I'm in a local shopping mall in the city center of St. Petersburg. Here I can see that although some Western brands have left the country, there are still many brands here to stay.
Next door is another beauty shop with more Western brands, Japanese diapers, and local Russian brands.
I think for girls, they may spend hours shopping here because the products are ample here. All kinds of brands, local made, European made, Asian made products, and the prices are quite fair. They have service people around. They have a desk like this for you to try products. I think life here is normal.
But wait a moment. Stars Coffee? Why does it look so familiar to Starbucks? Be it the shop decoration, to the logo, and even the layout of snacks. I couldn't help but order a latte.
335 rubles. I get my Stars Coffee. Yeah? I think even better than Starbucks. Maybe we use a better milk.
Now with a Stars Coffee in my hand, I find more Western fashion brands in the shopping mall. Though there's no official Apple shop here, I find a shop labeled Apple Premium Reseller. Inside, I find all kinds of new Apple products: iPhone 14, iMac, iPad, AirPods, and Apple Watches. And they're priced the same as in Beijing. The shop even sells cool gadgets of other brands like Dyson, PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo.
So my impression of the shopping mall in St. Petersburg is that still there are many European, even US brands here to stay, and they still have good businesses, lots of customers, and other brands, if they leave, some local brands will replace them, and the quality is about the same, I have to say.
And that will do it for this edition of Global Business here on CGTN. I'm Isha Vandenberg in Beijing. Thank you for watching. Bye for now.